Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining Cocktails and Chit-Chat. So tonight, signature cocktail is the Spritz Veneziano. And so I am Selena Ricci, and I'm the founder and artistic director of ARS Minerva. So if you're not familiar with us, our main mission is to bring back to life forgotten operas from the 17th and 18th centuries. And today it's our third session, third Cocktails and Chit-Chat. And today you're going to learn about design for opera. So about how to create a magical opera world. And also you're going to learn about how to make a poster for an opera production. So our special guest tonight made the backdrops for Ermelinda. So Ermelinda was our last opera production that we performed in November 2019 at Odyssey Theatre, and behind me there is the poster actually that was made by Mr. Ferreira, she is also she made already the poster for our upcoming opera recreation, which is Messalina, that we will create as soon as we can. And so I would like to welcome Entropy with us. Thank you for joining us, Entropy.
Thank you for having me. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. And let's see. Here we go. So I'm Entropy, and for me, opera is thrilling because you get exposed to all the elements of the production, and it is seen by a large audience. Opera is a much more complicated, aesthetically driven art form. It lives through the performance of the singers, the music, the costumes, makeup, lighting, and the scenic elements. All things need to be put together, and each thing individually couldn't do what they do as a group. So theatrical backdrops are often gone unappreciated. But they make the opera really extraordinary. Backdrops stretch the confines of the stage into endless possibilities. They invite us into secret bedrooms, palaces, and courtyards. Let us experience idyllic villages or open the horizon with a countryside landscape. They're the cradle of action. The opera singers, the conductor and director create the drama, but the backdrops really build the worlds. Over the last decade, there has been an increasingly shift away from hand-painted backdrops to digital versions. I must admit, I don't have a degree in projection design. It is still a pretty young art discipline. The first degree programs were only established 10 years ago. So historically, we all came from other disciplines and fields. I'm also not a scenic designer, but I worked in theater before. I personally identify as a muralist, and I basically took any job that would come my way. So As Minerva came through a referral of another opera group that I worked for. But working with Selena Ricci exploded my notion of what opera was. We all have divergent skills in the creative team. With my mural background, I have a sense of narrative, and I try to create stories within the image. The best artists, digitally or not, they're the ones who can pick up a pencil, look at something and see it before they start creating it. I wrote my PhD thesis about the murals in San Francisco, and it changed the way I'm painting and thinking about painting. When it comes to color, perspective, and composition, these murals are really powerful. Murals muralists often create the illusion of another place or time. So everything you need to know about storytelling, you're gonna find in these murals. I love to combine my hand-painted scenic backdrops with digital effects, like in the rustic village scene where the sky fades from daylight into night during the sequence. This is a spectacular effect and wouldn't have been possible in the old analog days. The digital revolution took place because the tremendous amount of work of hand-painted backdrops is in no relation to the limited usage of small productions with only a couple of shows. With Ermelinda, I first looked at the time when the opera was composed. It was created in 1680. Europe took a big interest in Oriental themes starting in the 17th century. The artwork of that time are often cliches and depict aspects of Eastern world, but they don't really present the reality. There are products by artists from the West showing what they wanted to see in the Middle Eastern culture. You find majestic architecture, picturesque landscapes, sensual delights and shameless desire in harems, fanatic warriors, ruthless conquerors, wise thinkers and researchers, Oriental princesses and headscarf girls. I'm sure Domenico Freschi was also inspired by these pictures when he let the plot of his opera unfold in Phoenicia, Lebanon. The style of the original illustrations from the libretto look very, very European. In early stages of the design process, I let my thoughts wander. I go to the library or bookstore to find inspiration. Celine usually gives me the script and the mood board for each theme, that I get a feeling what she's imagining. I don't ask her for colors. I want to know how it feels. I play a lot with different perspectives, and my visual choices are focusing on telling the story well. So I ask questions like, what is the nature of the scene? Is it welcoming? Is it idyllic? Is it cold? Is it threatening? How do the characters interact in the backdrop? How do they move in a natural way? The backdrops become alive through the singers. So you really have to put yourself into the mind of them. The performers interact and move in the space. They activate the backdrops through their own storytelling, and they make the audience believe in the depths of the landscape. The backdrops create the atmosphere. They form the world the protagonists are living in. Look at Rosaura's apartment. What kind of person is Rosaura? Her name means rose. Her girly pink saloon is a very emotional piece that reflects her personality. The delicate pink color tells a lot who she is. She's romantic, she's playful, charming, and very, very feminine. During gatherings, she amuses Ermelinda as well as Clorindo with interesting conversations. She tries to please her guests, and she represents an inspiring, beautiful, and educated hostess like Marie Antoinette. I usually have an image on my mind and start with the outlines. If I don't have a solid idea, I get in trouble. The idea must be very visually strong, but the image shouldn't attract too much attention. The backdrop creates the frame and the surrounding we present the characters in. What in film does the camera, does the backdrop and lighting in opera. The backdrop is part of extending the world on the stage. And I don't want the audience to think too much about the scenery. It should make sense and just be there. For Rosaura's apartment, I created an original princess oriental rose bed in the first version. I imagined Rosaura welcoming her friends in her bedroom. She would sit on her pillows on a like in a traditional oriental floor seating and welcome her friends. But this seemed a little bit too private, so we decided to go with a cozy living room atmosphere. I matched colors with dresses from costume designer Matthew Nash. The aesthetics of the room fit with Rosaura's richly colorful and extravagant dress, which is overflowing with roses. Rosaura's apartment is the most lavishly furnished room with a lounge swan sofa, Moroccan hand-painted coffee table, and impressive pink rose curtains and drapes that make an elegant statement to complement the Oriental design style. Rosaura's eccentric way of dressing and her luxurious interior design as a way of self-expression. She's in a women's world where everything is about appearance. For the Suburban Village, I wanted to create a desert oasis where you get greeted by towering palm trees standing at the entrance of the village. To make the setting as authentic as possible, I chose a real village in the heart of Lebanon. It's called Dair el-Qamar and dates back to the 13th century. There's not much going on in the village. It's very calm, a perfect place for Ermelinda's father to hide her and save his honor. I like that the village has a rich cultural heritage and is very open. They have all religions in this village. You can find a mosque, a synagogue, many Christian churches. I was surprised how green the mountainside looked like. And I feel like the scenery is inviting Ermelinda to dream of her lover. The limestone brick buildings, the beautiful gardens, and the vegetations are simply magnificent. My courtyard with cloisters is a reference to Egyptian architecture from the 19th dynasty. The ancient Egyptian palace is a particularly iconic image. The cloisters were a great setting for all the intrigues. The courtyard is the centerpiece of the building. There's a palm tree garden with a water fountain that gives room for private conversations, but the arrangement with the columns becomes also a great hiding spot for Armindoro and Aristeo. They want revenge after they discover Ermelinda with her lover. The accelerated perspective gives an enhanced sense of space and depth. It took me a couple of sketches to actually find the appropriate viewpoint that you can see the long column hallway and then also have like an open space on the courtyard. The arches of my delightful garden are inspired by the apple trees in the High Grove Royal Garden. I designed the garden after the concept of an Islamic garden. In the Quran, you have over 120 references to the garden, and it's meant to replicate paradise on earth. So the origin of the word paradise comes from the Persian word Pairidasa, meaning a garden enclosed by walls. I incorporated keel-shaped arcs along the walls of the orangery because walls are a very essential element to give shelter from the heat and desert wind. Another important element is water. The garden is constructed with a central water fountain. It's a symbol of life, purity, and wealth. Rosaura is very confused and sad in this scene. With the orange tree arches, I wanted to create a place where she goes to relax her mind. Imagine the exotic citrus aroma and the tasty fruit. The beautiful tree provides shade, and Aristeo tries to comfort and seduce her here. At the desert countryside with Solitary Palace, Ermelinda feels very lonely. She's out in the fields working. Clorindo is captive in one of the rooms of the palace. The palace with the small dome on the roof of the tower is based on the Sidion's sea castle in Lebanon. It was built by the Crusaders in the 13th century as a fortress of the Holy Land. I created an inside view into the large vaulted room to show Clorindo's prison. In the second floor, you see a middle-aged metal cage, which was just big enough to fit a human into, but not big enough to move. The victim would be left there without food and water until a confession was admitted, or the person would die. The room in perspective draws people's attention to Ermelinda's and Ormondo's endless love. The infinite is emphasized through a door metaphor. It's incorporated in the geometrical layout of the building with the long hallways, as well as the highly complex arabesque decorations on the semi-transparent walls. I used a one-point perspective to show the eternal love. Ermelinda is desperate because she thinks Ormondo is dead and she wants to die to be faithful to him. But then the story turns and it becomes a happy end. It's a beautiful reminder how love grows stronger and stronger with each step you take together and how the possibilities become endless. In theory, everything is easy with the projections, but it's much more complex in reality. In the rehearsal, we have to bring the light on the stage and the background together. While I extend the stage with my backgrounds, light designer Thomas Bowersox shapes the stage with the light. Until the rehearsal with the singers, we don't know if the backdrops are good. Sometimes a backdrop looks really beautiful, but it doesn't go well with the interactions of the singer. You only can hope that it works to tell the story the way you want. And then you can support the idea with the light design. For example, we created 2 different spaces with 2 light squares on the stage. So Ermelinda is singing outside in the field, while Clorindo hears her voice and calls her from inside of the palace. You see, technology often answers our praise, but also gives us a headache sometimes. For example, when the subtitles take too much away from the backdrop or the image is too light for the text. Maybe no one in the audience notices what we fixed last minute at the rehearsal, but we're very proud how it works out at the final show. The poster is the very first thing somebody sees about our opera. It's setting the tone for what is to come. You have large format prints at the window from the theater venue. You see it on the website or in ads of the event. There will be production photos for the flyers later to expand the campaign, but this is the very first thing people are gonna recognize. For the poster for Messalina, the process was the same as with the theater backdrops. I talked with Celine how she wants to approach the piece and what the opera is about, what message she wants to get across. I read the script, but I don't put too much conception to it. Then I did a lot of research. I looked at films, paintings, novels, and I researched themes within the piece. Sometimes the idea is clear, sometimes it's not. I tried to get the essence from the character. Messalina is a historic Venus. She's a siren, a phenomenal character, very distinctive and complex. I presented different stages of her development to ARS Minerva, and the last picture was what's the direction we wanted to go. I asked Aura Veroni, who will be Messalina, to mimic the facial expression and to pose for the painting. This was important to communicate her own interpretation of the character's personality, expressing emotions the way she will do it on the stage. Our aim was to create a strong female character who is on a quest for freedom. With Messalina, we continued the traditional of old movie style posters. I took a similar color palette like the film poster from La Dolce Vita and melted the aesthetics together. It is a perfect mix of graphic design and a piece of art. We wanted a glamorous, provocative approach to the character as it is seen in La Dolce Vita. A big epic moment was the promise of action. So in both posters, the women are symbols of beauty. They're very graceful, men can hardly escape their charm. In La Dolce Vita, the actress Anita Ekberg as Sylvia was branded a sex goddess, and her performance was shocking to the audience in the 1960s. In the poster, you have this intimate moment where the journalist in the background watches her with reverence. Even they don't look at each other, there's a very human connection between both, which draws you into the poster. In my design, the viewer gets taken out of the position of the passive spectator. Messalina confronts and provokes the viewer. She has like direct eye contact. The painted face and her lips represent her power. She doesn't need validations through anyone. She presents the feathers of the swan like a trophy to show her power. The feathers are an illusion of the mythological story Leda and the Swan. Zeus seduces and rapes Leda in there. I tell the story a little bit different. In my version, it's a form of liberation. Messalina already explored all her needs and desires. Looking into the eyes of the viewer, she stays directly connected, shows self-direction, self-confidence, and self-determination. She's beyond wanting to be wanted. Messalina is living a double life. Her two world contrasts are coming together in a red and blue connection in the background. I toned down the color to make it a little bit more dramatic. It's a very clean design with no prominent background. I chose a black and white Art Deco font, which is a mix of modern geometric shapes with some elegant fine lines to add a retro touch. Sometimes less is more. The order is much stronger when it's simple. So all the elements support the character. There's no fighting for attention. It's a powerful and iconic presentation of Messalina that gives the viewer a glimpse of what to expect in the opera. The only thing that is missing is date and place where the opera is going to be performed. This is still to be announced. But when the show opens, please join us and buy some tickets. I'm sure it's going to be terrific. Any questions? I give back the word.
Yeah, are there any questions in the chat? Who created the trailer on the website? Yeah, so Entropy. So thank you, Entropy, for the great presentation. So yes, Entropy created the trailer for this this event that is on the website. Any other questions?
So I found this fascinating, very, very high level talk, very, very stimulating. So you talked about learning a lot through interacting with Celine and with ARS Minerva. Can you give a couple more examples of how you developed as an artist through this collaboration?
I mean, it's very different to work in theater, because if you have coming from a mural background, of course, you always have like persons in the picture, and you depict something that should be in the focus. But at this time, you have to take yourself away and step back, and kind of find all the points with the collaborations. And the other groups I was working with, there was not so much collaboration within the creative team. And I really enjoyed that, you know, to go to a costume designer, Matthew Nash, and kind of match with him the patterns and the colors of the costumes was the background. And you basically, before you had like an idea how it gonna come together, and there was not so much failure because of this, because sometimes you present your backdrop idea and it doesn't match because you didn't communicate enough with the with each one in the team before. And it's also, you know, very different how people think about space. Like the director Celine, she has a completely different focus than the singers who are on the stage and who are moving there, and they all have like a different point, and that adds really.
Yeah, and also what is for opera, I always say it's kind of, opera is really a meeting of different arts. So for example, and it's like, it's a miracle, right? That everyone comes together and then it works. So on my side, once I have the direction, the idea, then I work with people that I know they're going to be good. And so we, once the idea is communicated, then we just have those mood boards, and then we go forward from scene to scene. And sometimes also I can ask some precision on some things that I'm going to need on the stage, for example, either the backdrops, either the costume, either the lighting, for specific needs. But what I like is really collaborating and putting everything together, and that no one feels suffocated by any tyrant behavior.
So the mood boards, can you maybe explain that a little more? Because that's the first time I heard of mood boards, but it's like how you feel the scene is going to be, and then the fact that you used also like real places. I was at Ermelinda's performance and I was fascinated by the, you know, the backdrops and how they changed, like you said, the dates and night. But I didn't realize they actually represented real places. Maybe that's why they felt so pertinent in some way. I don't know. So yeah. It's too many questions.
Well, like for example, for Ermelinda, how for the Rosaura apartments, because of the script and everything, I had this image of her being very girly. And if you saw the movie of Marie Antoinette, the Coppola movie, that you know, this feeling, right, very pink, very over the top courtesan, and so then this is what I just communicate, and then we are on Pinterest and we put all the image we feel that go into that.
And it's really good to have it, because sometimes even if you talk about it, I imagine it completely different how Celine is imagining it. And then if I have like a picture and I get the mood, it makes it much more easier to communicate what the director wants. And also I really appreciate the freedom Celine is giving us. So sometimes she sent me something with her mood board, but I came up with something completely different. But she still kind of accepts other ideas. She's not like focusing on her vision, how it should be. She's very open when it comes to the final product.
Yeah, what's important is the idea, and then for example, I'm not going to be, if there's something that is 3 inches like this, or, you know, and also, you know, some people are like this. I'm not like this. But, and I also appreciate the collaboration. Otherwise it's not, I mean, it's not worth collaborating if you're not capable, right, of that as well. And Entropy, we have a question. How much does Entropy engage with the music?
Ooh. Not really much, to be honest. I think I heard the music the first time in the rehearsal. I mean, you sent me the libretto, Celine, but I must say my knowledge about music is too little to actually kind of read it and then get the idea how the music gonna be. I was very surprised of the opera that it didn't sound very oriental. I was thinking of something more, but I mean, you could also see in the libretto, the illustrations, you look very European.
Yeah, so the idea was also that so I wanted Orientalism because I thought, oh, those people in Venice who wrote the libretto, who wrote the music, are people who have never been to Middle East. And so they imagine all this. And the idea was like someone in Venice who sees all those boats coming from Middle East and those things, and so start to imagine that, but their imagination is going to be a crossover between Europe and Middle East, right? But it's still European, right? Creating that. And also what we do, it's really music recreation. Yeah, you have to also to understand that people do not know this music. So unless you read music until rehearsals, you don't know what it sounds. And even when you can read it, then everyone is together, it's very different. So the way we work, we are really on a thin thread. It's very interesting. It's very different, like doing a bohème or a famous opera where you know how it's going to sound. For us, it's a different approach, and you need to be very flexible and have lots of imagination for everyone. Really, it's a work of imagination for everyone, the singers, the musician, the creative team. Everyone has to be flexible, imaginative, courageous, strong. So it takes very special skills, very special people to work on that.
I had the same question as Christoph asked in the chat, which is, what happens after your paintings? What's the process to get to the projections from the painting?
So what I do, I start painting on paper. It's a watercolor I do in a small scale, really, and then I take a picture and edit it digitally afterwards, and make spotlights, or for example, if you think about the rustic village, which was going from daylight to night, the night scene, I only did digitally. So I made everything a little bit darker, added the stars and everything. It's not hand painted, the same thing. It's just projected and layered over it. Yeah.
But how can you keep details and resolution of the painting?
I have a good camera. That's how I do it. I'm very happy just with the camera. I didn't know if it works out. If not, I would have gone to a copy shop who would have been able to scan it, like in large scale. But it works with the projection very good, just with a normal camera.
This is Beatrice. I have a question. Your projections and the drawings are absolutely beautiful. How do you balance what the eye see when you create the drawings and how is going to be rendered as a projections with special lights?
I feel when the lights are coming, they change it a little bit, but it's not too much difference. It's the first time with Celine that I worked with projection, and I didn't know what it gonna do with the stage lights being mixed with the projection. But honestly, there's not too much of a difference in how the mood is or how the feeling of the backdrop gonna be.
Yeah, so to talk about lights, so what did happen with Thomas? Thomas and I met several times before the rehearsal. And so what happens is that I talked with him about every scene, and about the mood of every scene, and then I make draft about where the soloists are going to be, and then I send to him, as I receive from Entropy, the backdrops, so he can see the colors. I send to him pictures also of the fabric for the costume. So when he builds up everything in his mind, and so he knows immediately what has to be done. And also something that I hate, it's when there is too much light on stage, because when there is too much light, actually you can't see anymore the backdrops, and actually it ruins the action. So this is good, because if you have less light, especially at the back, you can see much better the backdrops and the super titles, and actually it highlights the character when you want to highlight them, instead of having huge lights all the time on people, and you lose the interest. Well, thank you so much everyone for joining tonight.